Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, April 12th, 2026. Coming at you live from the Great Bagel Boss in Hewlett. Big show coming up for you today. A little pregame show for the Islanders versus the Montreal Canadiens. My name is Sean Cuthbert. With me, as always, is Mr. Arthur Staple. Arthur, Jake, how you guys doing?
We're doing good. Yeah.
In unison.
Yeah. A sunny afternoon here on Long Island. A little cloudy around UBS Arena.
Possibly, yeah.
We'll get into that, but plenty to talk about today. But before we jump in, just want to thank our wonderful sponsor, Razor Kniff and Launstein Attorneys at Law, ready to fight for you. Check them out at razorandkniff.com, RAISERANDKENNIFF.com. for a free consultation. And if you are hanging out with us live in the chat, you want to get your questions in for Questions Brewing, just type in Questions Brewing, and we will get to that question later on. So, Arthur, gentlemen, the new coach shine is maybe worn off a little more quickly than you would have hoped. Let's start with Toronto. They come to town, a depleted Toronto Maple Leafs team, a team that the Islanders absolutely should have beaten, of course. And to the Islanders' credit, they came to play. They what are they out shooting, like 24-6, I think, in the first period. And it was looking good. Somehow it ends up 2-2 anyway. Early in the second period, they open up a 2-0 lead. It gets tied up, and then maybe in that moment you're like, "Oh man, is this really happening?" But thankfully, Matthew Schaefer ties Brian Leetch for the rookie defenseman scoring record to open things up. And finally, the Islanders take over from there. They get a couple of power play goals, and they end up winning the game 5-3. But Arthur, what did you see in that game?
Well, I saw probably Ilya Sorokin's worst game of the year, or close to it, and that's a good time. Good time for him to have a bad one because you're playing against a team that's not playing for anything. The 24, I think it was 24-3 in the first period. Mm-hmm. You like to see that. Obviously, they feeling motivated with Peter DeBoer coming in after they had a couple practices with him. Mm-hmm. Know that you need to jump on a team like Toronto early, starting a rookie goalie, his first NHL start for the Leafs too, Artur Akhtiamov. So they did what they needed to do in that game.
Yes.
Again, not great from Sorokin, but that's okay. Giving up 3 to that team, you don't love it, but you can park it as long as you get the goals that you need. And they got a couple power play goals.
Yeah.
Cal Ritchie with another good game, couple of points. Mm-hmm. Matthew Schaefer tying Brian Leetch. So some good stuff out of that, and really kind of you looking at those at the 4 games left under DeBoer, but before that game, and you're saying just 2 points, exactly. 2 points, keep getting them. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about the rest of it. So they did what they had to do that night. Of course, we'll talk about yesterday now.
Yes, we will.
And didn't do what they needed to do, but that was a good start.
Well, speaking of good starts, I will give the Islanders credit where it's due for the start of the game last night, where they did come out motivated. They did come out looking good. You have round 2 of Lee versus Tkachuk to start the game. Didn't really go Lee's way, but you still appreciate the fact that Lee did it once again to get the I almost said the Coliseum crowd, the UBS Arena crowd going, and they're banging bodies. And this actually looks like a high intensity playoff game. The crowd is into it, and they're cheering after every big hit. You had McLean defending Schaefer when he got in the mix a little bit, so it was a great start. Aside from the scoreboard, they didn't get to put any goals on the scoreboard, but they look good. And from my vantage point, I was like, okay, DeBoer got these guys ready. They're going to give Ottawa a game here, and they start drawing some penalties. They're out shooting them. I think at one point 6-3, 7-3, and they end up on the power play. And that is when things, of course, went south. And you have an ill-advised drop pass. I'm sure Pajot thought that Tony DeAngelo was more than 17 miles away. But DeAngelo took the risk. He had to skate half the rink down just to try to, contest that puck, keep it inside the blue line. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out. Puck goes the other way, and you have Greg getting that shorthanded goal. And for me, that's just when the game completely changed complexion.
Yeah. I mean, going in how on razor's edge everybody is. Everybody's hyped. Like you said, they're hitting, it looks like a playoff game. But this is this is when you're down 3-0 in a series. It's that kind of game.
Right, yeah.
So everything is building towards getting a lead, getting your momentum, and the, I wasn't there, but you could definitely see on TV and feel the air went out of the building when Greg scored, because you're pushing so hard. Everybody's like, oh gosh, not again. And especially having it happen shorthanded, where they've given up. They gave one up to Carolina in that game. They gave one up to Philly. These key games, these last few weeks, where they really haven't produced enough and haven't done enough. I think the through line of those games is really failing, not just to produce on the power play, but having it be a negative where you're giving up shorthanded goals. And it was, it's good hustle play by Ottawa. They have really stepped up their game quite a bit. And you saw, like you mentioned, Brady Tkachuk, and then he left the game in the second period, didn't come back, kind of unsure what's going on with him. They didn't miss a beat. And really the Islanders just didn't break through. They broke through enough to draw some penalties, but even on the power plays were such momentum killers the whole game that it was kind of, reminding us, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, when we wrap up the season these next couple of weeks, that the power play has been a net negative for a long enough time now that something drastic has to change. And we're not talking about changing assistant coaches, even changing head coaches. This is about the personnel on the ice not getting it done, and that hasn't been more glaring than it was yesterday.
There has been so much justice for Scott Gomez since he left.
We can name them all off. I'm trying to remember, outside of Gomer, who else we're talking about here.
You had your man, Hiller?
John McClain was involved. Jim Hiller.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be a good trivia question, Jake. Try to name all the assistant coaches who have run the power play in the last 8 years.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But the crazy thing is, somehow the power play got progressively worse last night as the night went on. They get 5 of them, and the first couple they're establishing themselves in the zone. They're getting some chances, minimal. But then by the time they got to the 4th, 5th power play, they couldn't even gain entry.
No, you've got an Ottawa team that also came in ranked, I think, 29th in the league in penalty kill.
Right.
Penalty killing is about confidence building and momentum and want to. And when you get that shorthanded goal and you've got a team on its heels, and even though you keep taking penalties, they just seemed like they were the ones in control when it was 4-on-5, and that just can't happen. You have to be, if it means changing it up, if it means changing up the drop pass, just throwing the puck in the corner and going and outworking somebody to get it. That to me is a little bit inability to adapt, and that's something that we've seen when Patrick Roy was here. And we can talk more about Peter DeBoer and his influence, but he's not changing fundamental things on the job with 9 days to go in the regular season. He's reinforcing some simple principles, probably doing that on the power play too. But clearly this is a team that has not had enough success on the power play all year long and just not been able to figure it out when things go wrong, and things went wrong pretty quickly yesterday.
Yeah, and it's actually a recurring theme from last season. I just remember a lot of fans saying if they had even a halfway decent power play, they're in the playoffs, right? And that's even more stark this year because, literally, they were there for the majority of the season. And they did it, despite the power play. And now you have a game like last night where it becomes so glaring, where they get 5 opportunities, and it's just completely dismal. And if they pop 1 or 2 in, it has a completely different complexion.
Just one in that game. It was 1-0 all the way through until Ottawa got the 5-on-3. And, you can argue about giving a team a 5-on-3, but those are both penalties to Soucy when he threw the puck into the Ottawa player's shin pads and chopped him down, and Pulock chopping Stützle down. He went down pretty easily, but those are penalties you can't, in that situation, I think certainly the Pulock penalty reflects a tightness to everybody's attitude on the ice and everybody's feeling in that game, that one mistake is gonna cost us the season. And when you play like that, it's hard to be successful and productive because you're just putting so much pressure on yourself and so much pressure on your team to make sure everything goes right. When one thing goes wrong, it all goes to. Yeah,
and I feel like that Soucy play would just encapsulated his tenure since he came over.
It's funny to note too. They started that game with Soucy and Mayfield as the pairing, and I think they went away from it pretty fast. So Peter DeBoer is a smart guy. He's a smart coach. I'm sure he's seen enough tape to know we'll try it if it works.
Right.
But this is a pairing that's been one of the many factors in the last 2 months that's brought this team to where it is.
Yeah, it's a shame because I feel like when Soucy first came over, like he was fine. You know, like he served the purpose he was brought into, right? Kind of just be a little insurance for the D. But the more he was paired with Mayfield, the more the two of them were kind of just mutually exposed. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You kind of need somebody, whether it's Susie or Mayfield, you need somebody paired with them to counterbalance their, I suppose, where they're weak, right? And unfortunately, I feel like the two of them just kind of amplified it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, too stationary for those two guys, and not good chemistry to have that. Sometimes guys who play similarly can at least have good chemistry together and work off each other. That was not the case here.
Right, and so you blast a shot off somebody's shin pad, it goes the other way. You have no choice but to take the guy down. So he takes the penalty, and I'll tell you, as soon as Pullock took the second one, I was like, they are absolutely scoring on this 5-on-3. And you saw it, and that was the game right there, because they had nothing previous to that, right? If it was still a 1-goal lead, maybe they get that lucky goal towards the end, right? You pull the goalie, maybe they get the miracle goal to tie the game. You at least salvage a point, if not more, right? But doesn't happen. Ottawa gets the empty netter. That was a bit of folly as well at the end there with Barzal trying to get the puck, and that doesn't work out. And just a miserable way to end a huge game at home, and everybody's going home real upset.
Sure, and then, last night, you see Philly come out the way it came out, 7-1 in Winnipeg. And Winnipeg needed that game too, even though they've had a bad year. Mm-hmm. And Columbus coming out in Montreal like their season depended on it.
Right.
And that makes it sort of doubly and triply more disappointing and frustrating, because the Islanders' season is probably over. They still got a percentage chance to make it. So much else has to go right, and I'm sure Jake will try to explain it to us.
Yes, he will.
To us, he's going to look like Charlie Day for the It's Sunny,
yes,
all the connections thing on the board.
Right.
But yeah, you just wanted to see the urgency, and I understand the physical part was good, but when they weren't getting to their offensive game, you were like, we've seen this movie before with this team, and really the offense has not been the problem the last couple months. But I think we all have long memories as Islander fans, and you think about seasons past and these big moments where they just failed to really do anything threatening offensively and let the other team get comfortable with the style of game that they were playing, and Ottawa certainly was.
Well, that's exactly what happened last night, because we were talking about it before we went live here, and they put up 22, 23 shots against Ullmark, and I was like, those had to be the 23 most harmless shots ever put on net. Like, that was an easy shutout for Ullmark.
I mean, and really Sorokin, outside of the shorthanded goal, which odd man rush down the middle, that's probably a high danger chance. Jake Sanderson hit the crossbar through a crowd. I don't even know if that counts as a high danger chance. So really, you're talking, and then the 5-on-3, if you take that away, just 5-on-5 or 4-on-5, maybe 3 high danger chances between the two teams. It was a real tight checking game. And that's a game, historically, we go back 5-6 years, that's a game where the Islanders feel very comfortable with some of these guys. And it's just, I think it highlights in the kind of beyond the pandemic runs back-to-back years in 20 and 21, how this team just hasn't been able to close the door in important games to be able to be that dominant team they were for 3 seasons between 2018 and 2021. And if Lou Lamoriello was still in charge of this team, all the fans would be saying, "Oh God, I've seen this movie before."
Right.
And now I think some of them are even saying the same. They're leaning on Matthew Darsh, and I'm like, got to hold your horses here. This is guy's been on the job for a full year yet. I understand we can dive into some of the moves that he's made.
Right.
But this is to me, this is on the personnel, and this is why we talked about it on Wednesday night. I've talked about it on Tri-State show. The pressure is on Matthew Darsh this summer to change the look of this team, and these last few games, and really these last couple months, have been exhibits A through Z of why we need to see some new faces on this team. And it's going to be about addition, but it's going to be about subtraction too, and who he takes off the roster.
No doubt. And just to kind of pile on this theme that we kind of unearthed here, like we talk about how, low danger their shots were last night. And then you couple that with the games against Pittsburgh, Carolina, Philly, getting dominated in shots. So sure, they got some to the net last night, but this is a very disturbing theme that in your last 10, 15 games, trying to secure a playoff berth where you have everybody else showing up to task, right, and basically doing what they have to. Pittsburgh, right? They took it and ran with it. Yeah. You go 10 games ago, you're not sure if they're getting in, right? But they were like, no, this is what we got to do. They took care of business. Philly taking care of business. Columbus now even late, like you just said, right? The Islanders, though, when it mattered most, they were comfortable throughout most of the season, but now you get to these high-stakes games, and they can't elevate like the rest of these teams have. And I think that's a huge problem and something to keep an eye on.
You know, you take away the 3 wins that they had coming out of the Olympic break, which were kind of scrambly ones where they won a couple in overtime and then, outscored Florida. They've lost 11 of the last 19. This is obviously it's in stark relief with losing 5 of 6 and the coaching change. And really this is the part of the season where you've fallen out of a playoff spot. But this has been a slow, steady dive the last quarter of the season. Yep. And I think when you pull back from these last 2 weeks and look at what they've done in these last 19 games, which again, it's 20% of the season, 25% of the season, you say, okay, something more fundamental that needs to change than just, we blew it at the end of the season. They blew it coming out of the Olympic break, and they never really were able to recover.
Absolutely. So with all of that in mind, Arthur, let's apply some music here. What do you got for the anthem?
I'm digging back into my archives. Probably I had this one on CD, Dinosaur Jr., Jay Mascis, one of my all-time favorites. I actually got to see him in concert. They opened for Weezer at the Garden last spring, which was fun to see. Feel the Pain, a classic pre-emo 90s anthem. It sums it up right now. I think every Islander fan is thinking, you feel like you kind of got hit by a car here these last couple of weeks. Like, what happened? Yeah. We were going so well. The season felt so right.
The playoff emails went out.
That's right. Matthew Schaefer is going to win the Calder. Ilya Sorokin was going to win the Vezina. People were talking about Patrick Waugh for Jack Adams a couple months ago.
Yes.
So, and it's just sort of everybody got run over, and I know that Islander fans going to say like, "Oh, same old Islanders," but this one feels a little different. Yeah. This is a team that's in transition, in flux, and they've made some changes. We've got a new GM, you've got a new coach who's one of the most respected coaches in the league, and now I feel like we've come to the point in Islanders franchise history where some familiar faces are going to be gone before next season, and it's going to be a bit of a jolt, but it definitely needs to happen.
No doubt. And Jake, Ed, maybe you guys can help me out with this, but from afar as a non-baseball fan, to kind of equate to what you just said, Arthur, kind of felt like a Mets season.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Look at them jumping right in. Absolutely.
Like a Mets season where they bring in a bunch of guys, they have the high payroll, and they're doing well for, 800 of the 1,000 games that are in a baseball regular season, and then they get towards the end and they just collapse, right?
Yeah. I mean, all you need to say is Luis Castillo.
Let's not go there. But
I think he dropped the ball. They ended up dropping the ball.
I think that, you hit the nail on the head there. It's actually ironic, too, because what the Mets did this past offseason was get rid of some familiar faces, some franchise cornerstone guys. They said, you know what, this team's not doing it. Let's mix it up. And, hey, maybe Matthew Darsh saw what was going on 10 miles away. It was like, let's do that.
That's right.
It's a good way to put it.
Not sure the Met model is one you want to follow, but fair enough.
But you never know. You never know.
Well, folks, want to thank you all for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York live from Bagel Boston Hewlett. Happy to be here. We're going to take a quick break, and then the show rolls on.
Attention all artists, storytellers, and creators of all kinds. It's time to make your content stand out above the rest, and Floored Media is the place to make your visions become a reality. Maybe you want to elevate your podcast and add some video, or turn that novel you wrote into an audiobook, or maybe you just need the right space to produce your daily vlog. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, Floored Media has the professional facilities, exceptional staff, and intimate atmosphere to breathe life into your creative passions at every step of the process.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The train rolls on at Hockey Night in New York, and it is time to go on the line. And today, we are putting Matthew Barzal on the line. It's time to talk about number 13. He's been coming up on social media a little bit, especially after last night's performance. But let's just talk about this guy who has essentially been the heart of the New York Islanders offense for a good amount of years now. Let's see. Let's look at his numbers here. 1952, 71 through 79 games, nearly a point per game player here. And look, from my vantage point, obviously a huge part of this team. Super talented player. Happy to have him on the team. And, he's a lot of fun to watch most of the time. Defensive game has grown over the years, right? You're seeing a lot more back check out of him. There's a lot to like, but I understand, and I've seen that there's been groans more recently. And let's talk about all of that, right, Arthur? Let's just talk about the player that he is and what he provides, and then maybe what has people groaning. And you kind of alluded to this as well, talking about the power play a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's on a team of mostly grinders the last decade.
Yes.
He won the Calder in a year that the Islanders, that's probably their best offense that they've had in the last 15 years. They couldn't play a lick of defense. Then Doug Waite's only full year as coach.
Yes.
They had John Tavares. Josh Bailey had a fantastic year. Anders Lee had 40 goals that year. So
everybody.
that was an offensive powerhouse of a team. Tavares leaves. So you're left with, and Anders Lee is the captain, and he's a consistent goal scorer, and you've got Brock Nelson, who certainly emerged out of that. But if you're looking at the Islanders up until this season, you said they have one offensive star player, and it's Matthew Barzal. And he really, he went through the growing pains of having to accept becoming a more well-rounded player under Barry Trotz, who preached defense first. You saw a lot of 50 and 60-point seasons from Barzal, but you saw them go to the semifinals twice. So he accepted and understood what the role was.
Yep.
These last couple years, 80 points last year, going to have over 70 this year. That's solid. You're not in the upper echelon of NHL stars, but you're solidly in the second tier.
For sure, yeah.
But to me now, when you're looking at his impact as a whole, particularly after that Calder Trophy winning season, I just did a little search. Islanders are 30th in the league in power play since 2018, under 18%.
That's bad.
Only Anaheim and Philly have been worse. Only Anaheim and Philly have more under 17% seasons, and the Islanders dropped under 17%. Mm-hmm. So if your star has an impact, your offensive star, it's got to be on the power play. I understand you got to do what you got to do at 5-on-5. You got to be responsible. You're going to sacrifice points for pressure, for all the other things, for back checking, the things that Barry Trotz preached, the things that I think he's brought to his game pretty well. But on the power play is where you got to go be you. And we just haven't seen it consistently enough. And we're sitting here for a second straight season talking about why hasn't the power play done well enough to put this team over the edge. Last year we said, why wasn't the power play good enough? This year, now we never thought we would need to say it, but now we're saying, why wasn't the power play good enough? And especially yesterday. So that means you point the fingers get pointed more at Matthew Barzal. And to my mind, when I'm talking about what Matthew Darche has to do this summer in terms of taking bodies out and replacing them, you look at this forward group. You're not trading Cal Ritchie. You're not trading any of your young guys that are going to come up. You're not trading Simon Holmstrom.
Right.
You can't really trade J.G. Pageau or Braden Shen or any of these other mainstay guys. You probably want to trade guys like Anthony Duclair just to get them off the roster, but that's not really going to make a difference. So to my mind, there's one guy, and it's Matthew Barzal. He's got a 22-team no-trade clause.
Wow.
9 teams he can go to. I think it's time to start exploring those options. You don't necessarily have to do it.
I was leaving that question to the end of the segment, but go for it. Go for it.
I'm on a roll here. Forget it. I just feel like you have to. Matthew Darche's mandate now with Peter DeBoer in as coach, with Matthew Schaefer just starting, you have to figure out what's going to work going forward. And, I feel like there's a couple guys you could subtract off their defense. They need to change that look quite a bit.
Yes.
And up front, again, if you're looking for a guy who you can move for an impact player or two coming back, or to allow you to bring in an impact player, there's not many guys in this group. And I feel like you can't put it all on Matthew Barzal, but there are instances in a game, and I think we've seen it a lot in the last couple of weeks, where he is trying to do too much, and it really hurts him and it hurts the team. And I feel like in year 9, that's something he's got to get out of his game. If he's going to be here long term, I think Peter DeBoer has got to sit down with him, exit meeting, whatever, start a training camp and say, you got to do what we do. If you do what you do all the time, sometimes it works, but if it's not working, you see what happens, giveaways at the blue line, getting stripped of the puck there. I mean, obviously the game was out of reach, I think, at 2-0 yesterday. But those are just sort of emblematic of things like we need to see a little bit more consistency from him, effort-wise, thought-wise, I guess you could say, because the skill is always going to be there.
Yes, decision-making. Yes, absolutely. And it is most glaring on the power play.
Yes.
And it's much more forgivable 5-on-5. And I feel like that's where really he's doing most of his positive work is 5-on-5.
Yep, I agree.
It's when on the power play, it is just so excessively driven through him where it all falls apart. And we all know how talented he is. We all know how good a player he is. But it's just, for me, it's just way too deliberate where you know he's going to have the puck, and you know he's looking for the perfect setup, the perfect play. And there's no hey, throw it at the net and see what happens on the Islanders power play. And it boggles my mind because what they've been doing has not been working for a very long time. And they're almost just so stubborn in it. And, you know, the PK can just, you know, let him hang by the half wall as much as he wants. And that's what they do. They're like, there you go, buddy. Skate back and forth a couple of times. Pass to Schaefer. Take the puck back. Get it down low to Richie now. And then it comes back to you. I mean, we all know what's happening, right? And if they get a shot on, it's going high, it's going wide, it's getting blocked, or it's going the other way. And it's clearly not working. Now, is it to the point where you say ship him out of town? Not sure I'm ready to say that. And certainly we'd have to see what comes back the other way. I'm not going to say I'm completely close to it. I mean, I love Matt Barzal, the hockey player, and I love how much Matt Barzal loves being a New York Islander.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something you take into consideration as well. Obviously, if he's dragging your team down, you have to make some heavy decisions, right? But, you know, you talk about maybe DeBoer talking to him, whoever it is that has to speak to him, but something definitely has to change there, like you said, if he does end up sticking around, because this is not working. And, you know, he has the talent to be successful in the power play, as does Matthew Schaefer and Bo Horvat. Like, they have guys that can be successful in a power play. So it's not that they're lacking people who can have success, but the way that they're running it just has to change completely.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it before in response to some questions, because I know fans feel the same way.
Yeah.
I feel like as Matthew Schaefer gets accustomed to the league, and we've seen what we've seen from him, obviously everything has been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the one thing that maybe has been a little bit hesitant from him is dominating the power play.
Right,
being the guy
I agree.
who has the puck all the time, who makes everyone eyes on him. You know, he's got a ton of power play goals, whatever, 7 or 8, I think. So he knows what to do on the power play, but I think there's a deference to Barzal, because Barzal is the guy that's been here, the guy that is the creative force and has the puck and kind of gets people moving. Schaefer, to me, is going to be that guy sooner rather than later. And I don't know how Matthew Barzal will handle that, honestly. I don't know if he'll be amenable to that going forward, where Schaefer has got to be the guy that holds the puck inside the zone, that sets everything up. Everything runs through him. You know, and again, Matthew Barzal's impact, it doesn't even have to be a negative. If the team misses the playoffs consistently or never gets past the first round, you have to change things. And there's only one forward who you can change, who's really going to change the makeup of this team, who's going to free up enough cap space and enough oxygen, I guess, offensively to make such a serious change. So I feel like we don't need to run him down to say like he's a trade candidate. He's just the best available guy to move out. You know, whether you're talking about a Jordan Kyrou or a Robert Thomas, whether you're talking, you know, I don't know if St. Louis is on his no trade list, but I'm sure that Vancouver is definitely on his yes list because that's where he's from. Do you have a package that's built around bringing Brock Besser here, a guy who is a power play merchant, who's been a 40-goal guy, who's a pretty solid 5-on-5 player as well? I mean, Vancouver's been terrible, but they've been good in the last few years, and he's been a part of it. So could you make a trade where you trade Barzal for, say, Brock Besser and a younger defenseman like a Victor Mancini, the Rangers draft pick who went in the JT Miller trade, who's a right-handed shot, can skate pretty well? That's just one that I kind of came up with on the drive down here. Nice. If any GMs are out there listening, maybe that's a good one, Matthew Darsh. But I feel like that it's not going to be completely off the table. Let's put it that way. And I don't know if I'm saying pounding the table, saying trade this guy. That's the only way through here. There's other solutions. But when you just look at this team right now, I say if the best, most creative offensive player they've had in the last 8 years has them at the 30th ranked power play total in the last 8 years, then maybe he's not the right guy for this group. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, or you just figure out a strategy that, you know, utilizes his talents in a more productive way. And again, he has to be amenable to that too, as you said. But, you know, my first instinct would be, you know, let's try to, you know, magnify his talents rather than ship him out of town. Like, I'd rather add a scorer like a Kyrou or whomever it is for him to dish to, as opposed to swapping one for the other.
right? Because that's another issue with this team too, is that they've been just so devoid of having, a top heavy lineup, right? Meaning like you have your scorer in Horvat, you have your setup man in Barzal, and then there's a gap in the rest of the list. Now maybe Cal Ritchie becomes a guy who fills a void by left by Brock Nelson. That'd be great. But at the same time, you just don't have dominant offensive weapons on this team. And I would much rather add to Matt Barzal than swap him out for something else, because then you're still missing something as far as I'm concerned.
I get it. I just think that this team has been together. The core of this team has been together for 9-10 years, and
right.
I think if you're Matthew Darsh, you're coming in from the outside. You're taking this 10,000-foot view. You've changed the coach. You're the new GM. The only thing left is to change some of the personnel, and I think there are guys for me who I'd move first. I'd I'd make sure that the look of the defense changes quite a bit.
Yes,
you probably
sure.
Alex Romanov will be healthy. I think this is probably the summer you want to think about moving Adam Pelech, much as we love him, and certainly he's done nothing wrong.
Right,
defensively,
right.
You love what he brings, but again, the jolt that a group can get from changing out a lot of the same faces, and again, it's not about they're bad or they're low character or you need to run them out on a rail with pitchforks.
Right.
You just need to change. Trades to me, and I think a lot of people that I've talked to in this league feel this way too. It's not just about making the numbers work or bringing more guys in. You have to subtract. You have to give new players, younger players, people you trade for, room to fit in. And it's hard to fit into a room that's had half its team has been together for so long. So I think it's time. I think you've changed everything else that you can change. If you're Scott Malkin in ownership, now I think you have to green light some moves, whether there's a buyout coming, say, for a guy like Scott Mayfield. And again, I love Scott Mayfield. He's a high character guy. He's a guy who's sacrificed his body, fought, scored key goals in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But that situation where he plays, you need to get better value out of that. So sorry, I just feel like maybe that's the way to phrase it with Barzal. Better value. If you trade him for two guys and you can sign a third guy, that's probably better value offensively than what he's been giving you as the leader of this team offensively.
I think you make a very fair point there. And again, like, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. And I will say this, this is probably the highest chances of the Islanders doing something like that now with a new GM in place and maybe Matthew Darsh looking to put his stamp on this team, right? And maybe he looks at this and that's the way they go. Now, you don't want this to be like a Don Maloney, Pierre Turgeon for Kirk Muller situation.
No.
Because
that's change for change's sake, I feel
right,
like.
and that's what I'm scared of.
That was that we've all lived through the Mike Milbury years. That's what that was about. That was just, I don't like the look of this team. Let's just shake it up. Like they haven't done that. But I feel like we're kind of at a big turning point, a big inflection point for this team this summer that, if the biggest criticism of Lou Lamoriello was he was too loyal to these guys and we were ending up in the same place, even after such a fun season, I think you have to start thinking about what it's going to look like with 3 or 4 of the main core guys being elsewhere.
Well, there you have it. Obviously, the Matt Barzal experiment isn't perfect. We're even throwing out the idea of trades in the future. That's a little scary to me, but we'll see where that goes. Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat what you think. We're going to take one more break. When we come back, the show continues.
When in need of representation, it's not always easy to know where to turn. But whether you've been accused of a crime or need to go to court, Razor, Kniff & Lonstein, attorneys at law, have you covered with over 100 years of combined experience. With offices in Manhattan, Mineola, and Suffolk, Razor, Kniff & Lonstein is an award-winning law firm specializing in criminal defense with additional expertise in business debt settlement, trust and estates, personal injury, and more. At Razor, Kniff & Lonstein, you'll have direct access to your attorney 24/7. Because more attentive service translates to better outcomes. You deserve legal representatives with national recognition and a strong track record of delivering results. And Razor, Kniff & Lonstein are ready to fight for you. Call 212-LAW-1500 or go to razorandkniff.com to schedule a free, no-risk consultation today. That's RAISERANDKENNIFF.com. Razor, Kniff & Lonstein. We win cases because we make your problems our problems.
Hey there, welcome back. We missed you too. Now kick up your feet and settle back in to Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, folks. Settle back in. It's Hockey Night or Hockey Day in New York, and now it's time to go to what's on tap because the Islanders do still have 2 games remaining on the schedule. One being this evening at 6 p.m. The Montreal Canadiens come to town. The Noah Dobson-less Montreal Canadiens, so he will not make his return to UBS Arena tonight. We're going to have to wait for that. But this is a game where not only do the Islanders obviously need the 2 points to cling on to whatever hope remains of making the playoffs, but also maybe just exact a little revenge for the 7-3 drubbing that they took last time playing the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah. That was one of those ones. It was kind of the first one that we saw in this last month or so where you said, like, I don't know about this team.
Yeah.
They really let that one get away from them. They really left Ilya Sorokin out to dry in that one. So I need to see a lot tighter, and maybe the fact that we've got the coaching change again. I don't think Peter DeBoer is changing a lot in terms of systems, but I think he's challenged them to say, you've got to be better defensively. So hopefully they do that today. No Noah Dobson. Sounds like that could be a problem for the Canadiens going into the playoffs, that he's going to be out at least a couple of weeks. But they obviously have Cole Caulfield, who's gunning for the Rocket Richard, 51 goals now. Nick Suzuki's either hit or going to hit 100 points. Juraj Slavkovsky, I think, is up there goal-scoring wise. So that's an exciting young group that they've got. And they're young goaltenders, too, that considering that sitting where they are, that they're still vying for the Atlantic Division title, they've completely changed their goaltending room in the last couple of years. Sam Montembeault was the guy up until the middle of this year, and now Jakub Dobeš has been really good. He's not going to get some Calder votes over Matthew Schaefer, but he's been the top rookie goalie. And Jacob Fowler, who was mostly in the AHL this year, really interesting 1-2 punch for them. And to do that kind of seamlessly in the middle of a successful season, very impressive by Montreal. Jeff Gorton, Kent Hughes, Marty St. Louis. That's, to me, when you look at a team in the East that you want to model any sort of retool around, I'm looking at the Canadiens. I know it's been a long time.
Yes.
And they've collected a lot of good young players, but kudos to their scouting staff, to Jeff Gorton, who I think is a fantastic executive, previously with the Rangers and Bruins, obviously in Montreal the last few years. That's a team to watch, and I feel like if they're able to get the goaltending and Dobson can come back healthy, they've got Lane Hudson, they've got a lot of really good young players and some decent guys go around to complement them. So Islanders need to come out hot tonight. Montreal played last night.
Right.
So Islanders, the easiest way to kind of, you're going to be worrying about watching the scoreboard, obviously, because they don't control their own destiny and they're hanging on by a thread. But the easiest thing to do is go out and play a good winning game, get your 2 points, and then you can watch the scoreboard again.
Yeah, no question. And you talk about the Canadiens being a good example for a retool. It's kind of like you put them next to Detroit. It's this is what you do, this is what you don't do,
exactly.
Right? Yeah, for sure. And, you mentioned that they're still playing for the division title, so this is a big game for them because they're playing for home ice in the playoffs. So they're not going to take it easy tonight.
No, and we want them, obviously Islanders need to come away with 2 points here, but you want Montreal to still have something to play for because we know who they play on Tuesday. So,
right.
They play the Flyers, so that if that game still matters, you want the Canadiens not looking ahead to the playoffs.
You're kind of almost still rooting in it from a distance for like the Tampas and the Buffaloes a little bit too for Carolina because they're still vying for first place in the conference. So there's a lot of moving parts here for this glimmer of hope that the Islanders have for the playoffs. But look, it's funny. I mentioned it last week. Like these 4 games under DeBoer here, it's a crescendo, right? Toronto being not the toughest competition, Ottawa being a little tougher last night, Montreal an even better team, and then Carolina, obviously, if they still have something to play for, is going to be the toughest. So hopefully after last night, and despite being a bummer as far as being able to get into the playoffs, they can get up for this game. They can show the home crowd a good time too, right? Because they still got to perform in front of their fans here, especially with the season ending here. So it'd be nice to see them come out like they did against Ottawa to start last night, but then just keep it going because there was some promise there. So tough game tonight without Dobson, that'll help a little bit, but the Canadiens are still excellent.
Yeah, and I feel like, if the challenge is put down it's not said in the room necessarily, but for Matthew Darsh, for Peter DeBoer, this is an evaluation time. If we're talking about major changes coming this summer, if you don't show up in this game, you could put yourself at the top of the to-go list. So I think there's enough pride on the line, even if the playoffs aren't in the Islanders' future, to make sure you show up for this one.
Well, Arthur, speaking of pride, Tuesday might be just about that when we get to Game 82 against the Carolina Hurricanes. You hope they're still playing for something, but it might just be pride. It might just be showing Peter DeBoer and Matthew Darsh that you belong on this squad. So basically the product of the Islanders' nightmares for years now. What a way to end the season against the Hurricanes. You almost feel a little bit better if their season isn't riding on that game.
No.
Right? But, hopefully it is. But, I mean, this is obviously going to be a tough game, too, especially if Carolina is still playing for that number 1 overall seed in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough game regardless. That's just the way Carolina plays.
For sure.
And the feeling of disgust that I and lots of other Islander watchers felt at that game in Carolina last weekend.
Awful.
Where, what was it, 32-6 with the shots midway through the third period. The Islanders, I think, had 13 shot attempts through 50 minutes. It was one of those, it was obviously the breaking point for Matthew Darsh because he made the coaching change the next morning.
Right.
So, but I just feel like, you're talking about a team, Islanders, you can hate the Rangers all you want. You can hate the Devils, Pittsburgh, certainly. If you don't hate Carolina more than you hate all of those teams combined, you are not paying attention, because this is a team that the Islanders that has been their kryptonite for a lot of these years that we're talking about, these last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Even when they creep into the playoffs, Carolina's there to shut the door on them. So I would love for this game to mean something, and I would love it to be an Islanders game that they come out and say, we want to get in there because we're finally not going to play Carolina if we do get in. Or at least just say, okay, we're not rolling over here. And they've had some success in the regular season against Carolina here and there, and it would be nice to see that kind of carry into the offseason where you at least end on a high note. The maze that you have to go through, all of the challenges that you need to overcome here in these next 48 hours to get in. Let's worry about that if it happens.
You know what? That is the right approach, Arthur. You're absolutely right. All right, so that will do it for What's on Tap. The Canadiens tonight, the Carolina Hurricanes Tuesday, and maybe, just maybe, some games after that. But either way, it's time to go to Hero of the Week. All right, Hero of the Week. And, not a lot of heroes on the ice.
No.
Despite the win against the Maple Leafs, you and I both went off the ice as a little teaser here. I'll go first because you usually go first.
That's right.
So I'm going to go with new head coach Peter DeBoer. And he's a hero to me because he was able and willing to sign a contract to be the head coach of the New York Islanders. I say that in jest a bit, but, I have alluded to it on the show. I have said it on Twitter. It is nice to be existing in a time where the Islanders actually can go out and acquire a head coach of the pedigree of Peter DeBoer, because as some of us elder statesmen in the Islanders fandom know, we went a long time without that being the case. So it's nice to be in a fresh new era. And of course, money talks. Third highest coach now, apparently, in the league. So I'm sure that was fairly convincing, because I love it. When in his first interview, Peter was like, Darsh really sold me. And I thought to myself, I wonder how much that paycheck sold you, buddy. But all in all, love the fact that this is a guy who the Islanders could get, now have. And obviously, you cut him a break for these 4 games. As you said, Arthur, he's only going to do so much taking over so late in the game, doesn't have his own coaching staff, and at best, maybe he just kind of provides a spark for this team. But he's my hero because he did have them going in these last 2 games. One successful, one not as much. But I love the fact that he's part of this team, and I'm very excited to see what he can do with them with the summer, with training camp, and next season.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's one thing to be excited about through all the disappointment here, it's that this guy is he's gonna put probably a slightly different coaching staff together in all likelihood. Mm-hmm. He commands a lot of respect. He's been coaching consistently in this league for the last 20 years. Number of times he's missed the playoffs is about equal to the number of times he's been to the conference or the Stanley Cup final. So he knows what he's doing, and I think fans should feel like they're in good hands.
There you go. So that's Peter DeBoer. Arthur, who do you got?
I'm going to drop down to the AHL level
Hey now.
Behind the bench and go with Rocky Thompson,
All right.
first-year Bridgeport coach.
Okay.
The Islanders, the Baby Isles, are in their last year in Bridgeport. Look like they're headed to the playoffs. I don't think they've clinched yet, but they're about to, and they might even get home ice in the in that best of three in the 4-5 divisional game series. I think they might play Hershey. It looks like that's what they're headed towards. But yeah, considering that they set an AHL record for fewest home wins last season, that's a pretty big turnaround.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And you don't just owe it to adding in more, veteran AHLers. They have kind of a similar group to what they've had, but you've seen them integrate a lot of young guys. Alex Jeffries has had a decent season. Victor Eklund has been lights out since he came in. Rocky Thompson's a guy who's been around a long time, and you like to see a veteran coach like that come in, make a seamless transition. The only thing I worry about is John Tortorella. He's worked with John Tortorella behind NHL benches for a lot of years. And if Tort sticks around in Vegas, I hope he doesn't poach him. But for what he's done this year, the last year in Bridgeport, it's nice to see those fans get some playoff games. So kudos to him.
Was just going to say that. A nice little send-off for the fans to get them some postseason. Have you ever looked at the AHL postseason formatting?
It's wild.
It is wild.
I think I attended I was in the press box in Bridgeport the last time they played in this best of three series, which I believe was also against Hershey. Josh Hosang was on that Bridgeport team.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So it's been a little while, but yeah, it's there's a couple of buys. It's two best of three, then best of five, then we finally get
3,
to
5, 7.
Haven't really had to worry about the best of seven if you're a Bridgeport watcher.
No,
but
definitely not.
But hopefully they will this year. We'll see how far they can take it. And the thing that you always need is goaltending, and the Islanders haven't really had that at the AHL level. But Henrik Tikkanen, the big Finnish kid, late round pick, he's been playing very well down the stretch here for them. So another prospect to watch. I don't know that he's going to be playing any games in the NHL in the next couple of years, but at least they have him in the fold.
So, folks, just when you thought you may not be watching the Islanders in the playoffs, you can watch the Islanders in the playoffs just in Bridgeport. But great pick there. Peter DeBoer, Rocky Thompson. Hopefully the Bridgeport Islanders can close things out there. That will do it for Hero of the Week. And now we're going to take it over to the Snake Den.
Welcome to the Snake Den with Jake the Snake Redonis.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to hang out in the Snake Den with our pal Jake Redonis. Jake, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. It's always good when I could hear the theme song, too.
Yeah, man. It doesn't happen often, but there you go, right? Best theme song in the business. So did you enjoy the Mets reference earlier?
I did. Thank you for giving that one to me.
No problem, man.
It.
I know you're a sad, suffering fan.
I am. So that was nice, though. I do appreciate you looking out and giving me a chance to talk a little baseball, too.
Absolutely. So what do you got for us today?
Well, I think we'll just piggyback right off of what Arthur was talking about with Bridgeport.
Sure.
Only good news.
Yes, only good news.
Right.
Because if we're going to talk about Islanders
it's
playoffs,
a happy snake,
it sounds like it's going to be in Bridgeport, which they have their last home game today. That's regular season home game against Hartford at 5.
Okay.
So if they win that game, they're in the playoffs. And it looks like right now, like Arthur was mentioning, they play Hershey in that best of 3, and then maybe the best of 5, maybe best of 7 later on.
Sure.
But exciting times there. I think like when you look in the past with how bad they've been, to see Darsh's first year here when he talked about the importance of making sure that they had a team that could actually compete down at the AHL level. And to see that happen in the first year, obviously Rocky Thompson, a big part of that. Talked about Jeffries, Adam Beckman also having a great year, pocketing, I think, maybe around 33 goals. But it's good to just see that there's actually competitive hockey happening at that minor league level. And so I'm excited to watch that happen. Obviously, you got some guys who might be knocking on the door to make the Islanders next year, including Victor Eklund, who is now on a 5-game point streak.
That's what you want to see.
Yeah,
for sure.
You got to love to see that. He's 5 games. He has 2 goals, 7 assists, so 9 points in that 5-game span. Clearly came over. Looks like he's acclimating very well to that pro level.
Sure.
Someone that I think has a very good shot at making the team next year, whether that's right out of camp or if it's going to take a couple of games.
Right.
But it's always a good sign when you see someone come over to the States and be able to perform at the level that he's been at. So we'll see what happens with Eklund there. But I know everyone over there is very happy with what he's been doing. And it seems like he has that pedigree that he wants to come and play for the Islanders sooner rather than later.
Right.
So good stuff from him there. Cole Eiserman's over there right now, too. He actually just scored his second goal last night.
Saw that. In
Two
a
goals.
rough outing.
Yeah, they lost, but at least their young stars were doing something.
Yes,
right?
for sure.
2 goals, 2 assists in 9 games for him. Definitely taking him a little bit probably to get acclimated to that pro level, but I think he'll be okay. I don't think we're going to see him break camp. There's always a chance, but I think for him to get more experience down there is going to be good for him. Especially he had an injury this year in college, but still performed at a pretty high level. Obviously, when we talk about goal scoring with the Islanders, this is a guy that you really want to look out for in the future. Maybe you get something in the market. Maybe you have this guy coming up and he's able to do what he was able to do his whole life. So we'll see there. Aitchison still playing over in the OHL.
Right.
He can come over. However, Barry is doing very good in the OHL. So he's not.
Okay.
Their captain's not going anywhere soon.
Right.
But the good news is that he has not slowed down. They're up 2-0 in their series right now.
Love it.
He's just been a monster over there this year. In his last 10 games, he has 15 points. And this year, 70 points in 56 games, including 28 goals for a defenseman. Someone that also has a chance to possibly helping the Islanders sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But it'll be just cool for him to, when he gets over to Bridgeport, whether that's this year or to start next year, to play at that pro level, because we see what he does against guys his age. Let's see him do that over in the pros.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'll chime in. When we talk about Victor Eklund, I think his promise as a playmaker and a distributor, he did it in the Swedish league. He's doing it already. And when you see a guy scoring 2 points a game in the AHL, that tells me that's a guy who's ready for the NHL. I mean, it's a very small sample size, and maybe he'll get another couple of months there to start next season. But when you have a guy on the wing who can distribute the puck like he can, that means that I think when you're projecting down the road, you say, okay, Matthew Barzal is our kind of main distributor right now. If we've got a younger guy, a cheaper guy,
then we
can go out and get maybe a scorer or two instead of having a couple of guys who defer more than they shoot. So that's a long way off. But I think you have to, as a GM, you have to plan for the future and kind of see where everybody fits. And if Victor Eklund come to the NHL and be a 50, 60 assist guy on the wing, that changes things, I think, for them in terms of their offense.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see somebody come over and just have success so quickly, right?
Yeah.
And we've kind of noted on this before how, despite the record, but there also just haven't been a lot of guys coming up through Bridgeport lately that's really made an impact, right? It's been a little while since we've seen.
I mean, for forwards, I can't even think of the last guy who came through where you're like, okay, this guy is knocking on the door and he wants to be here.
Right.
Maybe Ryan Strome might be the last one, honestly.
I think you're right. I think you may be right about that. Wow. Good trivia question either way. But, now you have what looks like maybe a nice little core of those guys where Eiserman, Eklund, and eventually when Aitchison comes over. And all of a sudden, you have these guys who can knock on the door with the big team, but also, extend the success, and have a good start up in Hamilton, right? They're heading up there, and, that's that they can start, creating a winning formula up there because, as we know, it's just been devoid of that for years in Bridgeport. And whether you want to call that neglect or just mismanagement, the bottom line is, there hasn't been a lot to be excited about what's coming through there.
You can win at that level without anybody that's worth developing, just because you can get the right mix of veteran players to make it successful.
Yeah.
But you got to have some prospects. That's the thing that gets everybody excited, and the fact that they're losing, and you haven't seen anybody outside of maybe an Isaiah George come up and have any kind of impact. Right. Simon Holmstrom, I think we should probably throw in that category too. He spent a lot of time in Bridgeport. But you look at teams like a Montreal, like a San Jose, where they've built some young guys and they've supplemented with guys that come up through their system to join the guys that play right away. That's the thing that pushes you over the top. When you just have a bunch of guys, you look back at say Edmonton, the run of number 1 overall picks, guys that you can't really send to the minors early on, doesn't help anybody's development. So you like to see that there are guys, even if they're not breaking camp next October with the big club, they're there, and that's an exciting part to have for your organization.
No doubt about it. You got anything else for us, Jake?
Yeah, no, just piggybacking off of that too. It's important too that these guys are getting playoff experience in the AHL too. I know there was a lot of talk about, is Eklund maybe going to come up and maybe contribute to the team this year? I think it's smart for him to just go out there and get some pro experience playing in playoffs. high leverage games. Obviously, they have a chance to beat their rival today and get themselves in a playoff spot. These are the type of games I think you want to see these prospects playing in. So they're in a good spot right now. I hope they could carry this over to Hamilton. It is a shame that they won't be in Bridgeport. But at least you can now say things are on the up and up there.
Yeah, and to tie this into the big club, maybe one of the bigger disappointments of the Islanders potentially not making the playoffs here is now Matthew Schaefer and Cal Ritchie, guys like that, aren't going to have that playoff experience, even if it is just a first round and done. But it would have been nice to get those guys into that situation so they're ready for it when they're really a team, if and when they're ready to contend, right? Because once they get that under their belts, it's kind of out of their way, and they're like, okay, I know what that's about now. I know what NHL playoff hockey is like now, and they can kind of like get that shell shock out of the way. Looks like we might have to wait another year at least, but, it would have been nice.
Exactly.
All right, so that's going to do it for the Snake Den. Jake, great job as always. And now I'm going to tell you all about Isles Fix. That's right, Islanders Country. Get your daily fix of Isles news, highlights, and analysis by subscribing to Isles Fix, the Monday through Friday Islanders newsletter, sent directly to your inbox. Sign up for free or become a paid subscriber for added benefits at ilesfix.substack.com. And now it's time for Questions Brewing.
It's time for Questions Brewing. So go ahead, ask us a question.
So you've been nice and quiet over here, man. How you been?
I've been good.
Yeah?
I've been dreaming about the Islanders team I'm going to build in franchise mode in NHL 26.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to live out the fantasy there. If you guys want to watch that.
Yeah, listen, you got to get there
that
where
Stanley
you can,
Cup,
right?
You're more than welcome.
Very nice. So how are we doing in the chat today?
We're
this
busy.
Fine Sunday afternoon.
We're busy. We have a lot of questions, but we're going to start with Thomas Boyle, who's
There he
actually
is.
here.
Yeah,
He's in house
what's
today.
up, TB? In the house. How
We'll do
we
his
doing?
most recent question,
Okay, sure.
which is, do you see Beckman on the Islanders next season?
Oh, Adam Beckman.
I don't.
I don't either. He's a good depth option, and I feel like on a team that's not quite as crowded roster-wise with NHL contracts, he'd be a guy that you'd think about calling up when the injuries or offense goes dry. But they have Shabanov, they have Duclair, they have these guys at the NHL level who are not on two-way contracts like he is. So I think that's the main reason why we haven't seen him. But if he decides to stay, and I think he's a free agent after this year, if they sign him back, it'd be nice to see a guy like that who's produced the last couple of years in the AHL for them be rewarded with a call-up or two.
Sure. Ed, what do you got?
We got just in from David. He said, is Lee back and extended? We got to know.
I have been saying I think he will be, but I'm wavering a bit. I ultimately do think he's going to come back, but I could see it go the other way, and especially with the way they've crashed out. Because the last time we talked about this, they were in a much better position, right? And I almost equated him sticking around to them extending JGP, right? And I was kind of like, well, if they're bringing him back, to me it maths to bring Anders back too. So, but now seeing the way they kind of crashed and burned here at the end, maybe Darsh, gives it some longer thought and decides to take it in a different direction.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a situation where there's not a ton of urgency. If Anders tells them I don't need to sign July 1 at 12:01 or whatever the first minute of free agency is.
Yeah.
But I feel like what Matthew Darsh does between the end of the season and July 1 will say a lot about whether Anders Lee is back. If you see them making trades for a couple of young forwards, and suddenly you're saying you're filling in the roster. You're like, well, where does Anders Lee fit?
Right.
If there's no room for him, I don't know that he's ready. The guy's got 19 goals, 40 points. He's still a contributor.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's ready to be a 13th, 14th forward and just kind of be the captain because he's been the captain.
Right.
I get the sense that if he wants to play, he's going to play somewhere. But if he's committed to this team and he says it's here or nowhere, and I could see them sort of figuring out what they're doing with their roster and sliding him in for a bonus laden deal 1 year and then figure it out because whatever shortcomings the team has, I'm sure as a captain he feels responsible. But I feel like the way that he's playing at his age, there's a role for him going forward here.
I agree.
Ludiculous asks, why does Darsh seem to be going to, quote, be going for it with Shen trade and DeBoer hire? Team doesn't seem good enough yet.
Well, I mean, again, they were in a much better position when you talk about the trade deadline.
I feel like you have to separate out the trades. When he talked about after the deadline about making those trades, the Palat trade and the Soucy trade. The Soucy trade was kind of a necessity. They needed a number 6 defenseman. We didn't think that he would be this bad because he was certainly, he was playing on a bad Ranger team, but he certainly has been a capable guy a lot of his NHL career. So that's been frustrating. Palat trade was a miss for sure. I think that's a guy that he's familiar with from Tampa, knows what his pedigree is, but I think not knowing that maybe his game had dipped quite so much. But I think the Schenn trade to me is a separate trade. That and you can judge it however you want. You can say you're duplicating what you already have. But I think giving up a first for him for 2 more years of him, we saw he scored some goals. I think he might be their leading goal scorer since he was traded here. He's got good chemistry with Cal Ritchie. And you saw the way that he ran over Tim Stützle. Like you got excited to think like if we get in the playoffs, this guy will be a big part of it because of the way that he plays. It's tough to play that way at his age for 82 games, but I don't hate that trade. I really don't. And we can argue about it with the fans or whatever, but I feel like you take that separately than the other two. The other two were really just kind of stopgap things. The Palat was a miss. Soucy was a miss because of the way he played. I don't think anybody objected to getting him at the time. But I feel like he also, Darsh really tried to take some big swings. From what he said, he didn't specify, but the rumor mill's out there. He did talk to St. Louis about Cairo. He talked to Vancouver about Besser. Right. So I think he's aware of what he can do, and you can revisit those in the offseason. The going for it, you're starting to remake the roster, and I think the DeBoer situation, like you said, that's Scott Malkin saying yes to paying Patrick Waugh for the next 2 years and shelling out $5 million plus for Peter DeBoer. That's trying to jump at an opportunity to have one of the best coaches in the league here. That's no different than when Lou got Barry Trotz. After Tavares left, did anybody think that Islander team would do what it did the next 3 years? Absolutely not.
Nobody did.
I think the coach. We are in an era of coaches make a difference, whether it's confidence building, whether it's X's and O's, whether it's all of it. Peter DeBoer makes a difference with the teams that he coaches. I understand it. He gets moved on from it after a couple of years, and maybe this will be different now. Maybe he's changed the way that he deals with guys enough that he can last longer or build with what they're building. But I think if you say, "Oh no, we're not ready to have one of the best coaches available in the league," we'll go with somebody that nobody's ever heard of or a first-time coach. That's given up, man. And I understand it can work, but it works better when you have an established guy.
Right, without question. And I think it's very easy for a fan to use a little revisionist history here in the sense that, like, it's easy to say now, why'd you go out and make those deals now that they're on the brink of missing the playoffs, right? But I think everybody understood why they made those deals at the deadline, given the position they were in. They were battling for home ice at that point. They had a shot at number 2
so
in
why
the
are you reminding us?
We have
this
to. These
terrible.
are the facts, Arthur. These are the facts. We have to stick to the facts. But that's the point, right? And now maybe you don't agree with the particular deals that they made. But I don't think you can really argue with the method there and he came out and said, he's like, look, I wanted to reward the team for how well they were doing, and he wanted to pad their chances of getting in and being successful if they did. Now, obviously, this fell flat on its face, and you can look back and say, because look, I said it then, the first show we did after the deadline. I said the Schenn trade for me was a head scratcher because, we said in the immediate, it probably will work out well. It didn't. But we looked at his age, we looked at his contract, and we said that's a little scary, especially when you think about what they gave up in that first round pick, right? So didn't work out. But did any of us foresee this happening? If anything, most of us, and especially Matthew Darsh, thought that this was the little nudge that they needed to get over the finish line. And he's learning a valuable lesson now that didn't work out. But I don't think you can now look back and say, well, why did they make any trades at all? Because most GMs in that position are going to do that. Yeah. They might not get the same guys that he got, but they're going to look at their roster and say, how can I shore this up? And I know we're not going to remember this every trade deadline, but there's been plenty of teams over the years and Columbus has done this, and they might be on the brink of missing out too. Detroit gave up an unprotected first for Justin Falk. There you have it. That's my point, is that this happens all the time, and now it's just unfortunate that it looks like the Islanders are on that outside looking in situation where they went for it to a degree, and it didn't pan out. Yeah. Okay. You got it.
There you have it.
Yeah.
Magician Matt. He says, why do so many fans feel the need to dump all the struggles on Barzal? He's one of the only players that is able to create space and chances.
Well,
I think we went over that one.
Yeah, we did pretty well.
Nobody's completely dumping on him. I think the stretches where he's on the ice and tries to play all 5 positions at once, like there's nobody else out there, is the part that we'd love to see him get out of his game.
Yeah, agreed. And be a little less selfish on the power play, maybe a little more generous, distributing the puck. Yeah.
Jonathan Doe, he says, who on the team with value would consider waiving their NTC and why? Great show, as always, folks.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I don't know that. I think there's not a lot of guys with full no moves. Sorokin has one. Andre Palat has one, actually, which is kind of shocking, but the Islanders didn't give that to him. So there's a lot of partial no trades. Like we said, Matthew Barzal has a 9-team yes list. I think Bo Horvat has a full no trade. Adam Pelech, I think, is also 9-team yes or 10, something like that. Pollock has a full no trade. And Scott Mayfield, I believe, has a partial no trade. So you can work around the partial no trades. I think I think what we've seen in the league lately is players trying to exercise their control over these situations, but it's only once a GM says, we're looking to move you. You know, if Matthew Darche says in the exit meetings to Adam Pelech, Scott Mayfield, Ryan Pollock, we're going to bring your name up in trade conversations. We feel like we need to make some changes to the core. You're one of those guys. If you want to be part of it, you can tell us, and then we'll work with you. If you don't, then we're just going to work off you give us your list on July 1, and we work off that. So I think players would rather be involved in the process and figure it out. So I think they've got some guys that they could work with to expand their list of yeses.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Chris from Long Island, he says, is Barzal being traded in a big deal for Robertson, or is he traded for a bunch of futures that are flipped for a big scoring winger? Arthur, I would have chosen Panic by the Disco. Also, I mean, no. Oh, no, not Panic at the Disco. Panic by the Smiths, sorry.
Oh, okay.
And he also said Pelech is 15-team list and Pollock full no trade. Told me to tell you.
Also, I mean, and just like personally speaking, Ryan Pollock married a girl from Long Island a couple years ago. They have a baby. He's not going anywhere, or he's not saying yes to going anywhere.
There you go.
I think you have to explore all options with Barzal. Yeah, I would make a trade for Jason Robertson. Sure, I don't think that's going to happen.
You'd have to give,
and I think you'd have to give up a lot more than Matthew Barzal to get Jason Robertson, even when he's a pending RFA. I don't know that they're going to trade him for futures. I think that's too. We talk about that all the time, and I'm lucky enough I get to talk to some GMs even now, making that I'm going to trade this guy for picks and prospects, and then I'm going to turn around and trade all those picks and prospects for another guy. Like that's almost as complicated as how the Islanders can get in the playoffs right now.
Right.
You make the trade that you have in front of you, and if it's like I said, if Matthew Barzal says I'll go to Vancouver, and you can figure out who off their roster you want, at least it frees you up to make other moves, or it frees you up to sign somebody else. So, I think you start to get into that, like, let's trade futures and then trade the futures for player Y. Like, I think you just make the trade that's in front of you.
Yeah, and also you have to, you're first of all, you're making the trade you need to trade with that first general manager. Then you have to hope the second one's waiting for you.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they don't wait. They don't wait around.
Right. So I agree with you there.
Matt Mazziello says, what do we think happened to Horvat? Injured, maybe just tired out, not getting the Olympic break off?
I was concerned about him when he got hurt. I was like, because he was just playing so well. He was on fire. And I was like, man, I hope this injury doesn't take that momentum away. And kind of did.
Yeah, I mean, we always kind of, sometimes we overlook that when a guy's in a bad streak. We just say like, oh, what is he doing? It's like, usually 9 times out of 10, it's because he's got an injury that's harder to handle than it was previously. But he's also been a streaky scorer, I think.
That's true.
And maybe that's part of it that, they took Emil Heineman off his wing. So, I'm curious to see when it all shakes out when the season ends in a couple days. If he says there's something that's been bothering him, or if he just says, I need to be more consistent. So, he's had a great year, and those back-to-back injuries, we kind of looked back and said, oh, they got through it. They were doing okay. And now maybe we're kind of saying like, maybe they didn't get through it okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Craig, regular human bartender. So regarding Barzal and Pelech and other names that are mentioned, after Darche's moves this season, do you trust him to actually win those trades?
I mean, it's fair.
Yeah,
It's a question.
I don't know if Pelech is a trade you're going to win necessarily. That to me feels like you're not giving up on him, but you are trading him to make him. I think you could get some decent futures. You could get an okay prospect and a second round pick, say, but you're moving him to shake things up. You're not moving him to say like, Dallas is going to trade us Miro Heiskanen for Adam Pelech.
Right.
Right. Adam Pelech's 33 years old. He is who he is. A very, very solid, probably second pair guy in a good team. A guy who can play 20 minutes a night and kill some penalties for you. But he's also spent the last 6 years getting hurt a lot and being on a team that's not successful, especially defensively. So I don't know that there's a lot there to get back in a trade. And again, when you're talking about guys that you can trade where you will get a good return, that's why Matthew Barzal's name comes up, because there isn't really anybody else. You're making those trades on D to change the look of your defense and maybe get a little younger, a little bit more adaptive to Peter DeBoer's style. You're trading Matthew Barzal because you can get a lot back for him.
And I'm just concerned about trading Adam Pelech because, I just feel like the timing is off. I feel like if you unload him, if, let's say, Kishon Aitchison was further along in his development,
Yeah,
right?
I get it.
Then you say to yourself, okay, this makes a little more sense. He's obviously killing it in juniors, as Jake has pointed out to us, right? But he's probably not ready to step in and take over for Adam Pelech, right? And munch up his minutes. So when you look at it that way, it's like, well, who else on the left side is going to, supplement that, right? Is that person within the system? I'm not sure about that. And then you still have to go out and get somebody.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think if you look when they're fully healthy, you're not, Adam Pelech is the third guy on that left side. Alex Romanov is probably your number two. Matthew Schaefer is the clear number one on the left side. So is it worth it to you to have Adam Pelech playing third pair minutes? He'd be the best third pair left side guy they've had in 100 years, but and you want to see what Romanov can do. You need him to advance his game.
well, that's also kind of what I was going to get to also. Is I'm not even sure that he's the number two there.
I understand, but the way that you're paying him starting this year,
Right.
he's got to be your number
Yeah.
two. So I feel like that's another reason why the time is right. And if Patrick Waugh had stayed, I don't think Alex Romanov really fit Patrick Waugh's style of coaching. So I would have thought maybe they would have looked to move him. But I think now you've had this season, turn bad. You guys are getting older. I think Pelech is kind of the common sense choice for me. And I feel like
Interesting.
we're going back in time now. Talk about the Nick Leddy, Devon Taves. If you're choosing between a 30-something guy and a 20-something guy, I'm trading the 30-something guy 10 times out of 10 because I don't want that to happen again.
It's a pretty good point to end that thought.
Different
on. I
style
like
players,
that.
but I feel like you keep the younger guy and let him grow.
Well, we'll dive into that further in the season wrap up. But Ed, what do you got next?
We'll do another one from Tom, who
All
I know
right.
we spoke about Eklund before, but do you see him getting a call-up if they make the playoffs?
No. Sorry, Tom. This year.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That'd be a lot for him, I think. I think if there's a need, if somebody gets hurt and they need somebody to play and they're desperate, but I think Jake is absolutely dead on. Like, you let him continue on what he's doing, dominate if he's dominating at that level, play playoff hockey, show what he can do, show that he's better than everybody else in the AHL, and make him hungry to be here next season. He's not a Porter Martone. Like, you look at this at what he's done in Philly. You got a guy who's coming in off the college season who fits right in with what Philly needed right now, and too bad for that for the Islanders. But
Right.
But I don't think Eklund is that kind of player. I think you let him continue to get accustomed to what North America is all about, and then next season you hope he just tears out of the gate in training camp and forces them to put him on the roster.
With you there, Ed.
Don Pepe says, Mayfield, Engvall, Duclair, all lewd disasters that need to be moved. Can you see two of these guys packaged with Barzal in a 3-for-2 coming deal? Coming back deal.
Why would you want to lessen what you're going to get back?
Why do you want to have to throw in a first-round pick?
I think he just wants him off the team.
I totally get it. I totally get
Right.
it. I think you can trade Duclair if you throw in a mid-round pick to somebody because he's got 1 year left after this or 2 years left. You can't trade the other two guys. Like Scott Mayfield to me The original sin of Lou's tenure was what we just talked about, choosing to trade Leddy or choosing to trade Taves and keep Nick Leddy. The second one was signing Scott Mayfield. And again, I say this with all due respect to Scotty, who's one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
But the chance to the haul they could have gotten back for him at the deadline, his walk year would have been pretty impressive because there were not a lot of right shot guys. He was playing well at the time. And now this contract is pretty immovable. So I think you're talking buyout, and I don't know if they have the stomach for 2 long-term buyouts like that with him and Engvall. Maybe Engvall gets healthy and can actually contribute next season somewhere in the bottom 6. Maybe.
That is a big maybe, Arthur. Big maybe. And are demotions possible with these guys? Like, is burying contracts in the? Well, I was about to say the bridge in Hamilton.
It does. The buyouts for those deals are so. I think the charge is like $1.3 million or $1.4 million.
Yeah.
It extends for a long time for Mayfield, and it's even less for Engvall.
Yeah.
And then you only save $1.25 million for burying it. So, I just kind of wonder. There's no reason to bury a guy like Mayfield who's been in the NHL for over a decade. Engvall maybe is a different story since he's coming off the injury, and we'll see how he looks in training camp. But I think you got to be decisive with at least one of those and go the buyout route.
Yeah, fair enough.
DTMR, he says, what needs to be done to get Johnny Laz banned from UBS?
Arthur, I'll let you take this one.
Well, a little birdie told me, and that little birdie was Johnny Laz himself yesterday, that between the second and third periods, my good friend Tyler Brocious, who's the director of social for the Islanders, went into the meal room and told Johnny to get the hell out. Amazing.
Nice.
I don't know if ownership commissioned Tyler to do that, but I feel like the initiative was right, and Johnny took it in stride. But he's a mush. His own team, his own favorite team has been in the dumps for so long. He's trying to drag everybody else down now.
To his credit, he's actually been fair with the Islanders and kind of a
supporter.
supporter,
Maybe that's
right?
the problem. I think we need him to be a little bit feistier.
He said he'd get a sleeve.
I'll just say that this is the first year of the Tri-State Hockey Podcast covering all 3 teams, and this will be most likely the first year that all 3 local teams miss the playoffs in the same season. So. Historic.
Arthur, how does that make you feel?
Not great. Not great. Out of all the teams, why can't just the Islanders get in? The heck with the other 2.
We thought that's the way we were heading.
I know.
We really did. Yeah. Ed?
Chris from Long Island has another one. He says, does Darsh buy out Palat and Mayfield?
I got to say, and I have no basis for this, but Andre Palat is 35 years old. He's won a bunch of Stanley Cups. He's accomplished a lot. I wonder if he says, you know what? I think I'm going to walk away here after this season. I don't know. know. He's owed. If I was owed $6 million, I sure wouldn't consider it.
Right, sure.
But I wonder if there's a scenario or maybe there's a mutual termination deal. He's probably got some sort of bonus structure coming this summer. So maybe after that happens, they agree to mutually terminate, which we've seen with a couple of guys this year, and maybe he signs on somewhere else. We'll see. But I think he's such a high character guy and well known throughout the league for that. I don't recall a lot of veterans doing it. I remember Marcus Naslund did that with the Rangers a lot, maybe 2 decades ago, where he signed and it wasn't working out, and he said, "You know what? I'm not going to sit here and take money that I haven't earned."
Yeah. And
he walked away. I got no inside info on this, but it'd be hard to see him sticking around for next season. I don't know that there's a fit here.
I was just going to say, there's no way he can be part of the plans next season, right?
I wouldn't imagine so, but I think it's going to be hard work to try to figure out what to do with that contract.
Agreed.
Not a question, but I'm going to ask a question. What do you think about this take from Ludiculous? He says the fans are too negative on the power play. You need to cheer them on, not boo them in the stands when they disappoint.
This is
like DeBoer said. It's all about confidence. Fans can try to help, not hurt.
Sean, do you boo when you're in an Islander game?
No. No, I don't. I do not.
I do not
boo. See, I don't boo. I'm anti-boo. I understand why fans do it, and they're certainly entitled to do it. I don't know if anybody saw Todd McClellan, the Red Wings coach, after they lost and were eliminated yet last night against New Jersey, and someone asked him about they were booing during the stick salute because it might have been their last home game, and he said, "This is Hockey Town. Like, we deserved it. We earned every bit of it." And I get that reaction. But like I said, I would prefer to cheer than boo. But The motivations as a professional athlete don't necessarily rise and fall with what the fans are doing. You gotta dig a little
For
deeper.
crying
than that.
out loud. And if it does, like that's kind of a problem,
Yeah,
right?
it is. It is.
Now-
I'd love to see them be more positive, Ed, but I don't think we're going to see it in 2026.
I don't boo.
Yeah.
I'm entertained by the boos. And listen,
I think yelling shoot helps a lot.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's
I think that helps.
right. But like, in fairness to Islander fans booing the power play, like Islander fans have been very patient with the power
Yeah, we
play.
didn't we just throw out that stat? 30th
Yes.
in the league in the last 8 years.
Extremely patient. And in games that matter, you put up an 0 for on 5 opportunities.
-1.
-1 on 5 opportunities. You can kind of understand with them getting a little restless and a little impatient.
I want you to sneak like a video on Sean at the game on Tuesday, and if he's booing, I want to see it.
Are you saying you don't believe me? I'm being disingenuous
You're an
here?
emotional fan. I could see it.
I am not. I am actually like, I watch the fans watch the game.
All right,
You know what I
all
mean?
right,
I'm an
fine,
observer.
Fine.
I'm an
Fine,
observer.
we'll see.
Listen, I enjoy the highs and ignore the lows. If they lose, I laugh.
Okay.
I laugh.
Right.
When they scored that shorthanded goal, I laughed out loud in the stands. I'm not even lying to you. Yeah. Ed?
Why is someone wearing a Canucks shirt on this podcast? Are you wearing a Canucks shirt?
Well, you have to look a little closer, actually,
Oh, it's not-
because looks can be deceiving. It is the Canucks logo, but if you look deeper, it doesn't actually say Canucks on the shirt. It says Icelanders, which is the name of my men's league team. So
I love that logo.
There you have it, weather and aviation.
That's why we're using it, because we love it. We love those uniforms. Yeah, those black ones.
Other than that, I think we've touched on pretty much everything.
Tom,
All
Tom, you got
Thanks,
anything else?
Barzal.
Tom? No, okay.
Anything live?
Thanks for coming down, though, Tom.
Yes, always happy to have you here, buddy. So yeah, I guess that'll do it for Questions Brewing. And as you all know, when it's time for Questions Brewing to be over, that means it's time for the show to be over. So hit that music, Ed. All right, folks, want to send a huge thanks to Bagel Boss here in Hewlett. Always love being here. Wonderful hosts. Really appreciate the warm hospitality. And of course, a thanks to you guys for hanging out with us live here at Hockey Night in New York. If you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe. And Arthur Staple, where can we find you?
Stape NHL on Twitter, Artstape on Blue Sky, and here, and the Tri-State Hockey Report for at least a little bit longer.
That's right. Jake the Snake Radonis, how about yourself?
Find me on Twitter at Jake Radonis, Radonis.
There you have it. And you can follow me at Shawnee Hockey on Twitter, on Blue Sky. You can follow the show on all social media platforms at Hockey Night NY. You can check out the website at hockeynightny.com. So that's going to do it for us today. Islanders play the Habs. Hopefully we see 2 points, and by some miracle they're playing for something on Tuesday. We shall see, but either way, we will be back at Floored Media next week, 8 p.m. next Sunday, to continue this train here. So for Arthur Staple, for Jake the Snake Radonis, for Edzo on the engineering table, I've been Sean Cuthbert. We've been Hockey Night in New York. We'll see you next week.